in the heart of Lagos, where gleaming skyscrapers cast shadows over forgotten streets, two lives were about to collide in the most unexpected way. This is the story of how one moment of courage changed everything. The sun rose over Victoria Island, painting the luxury penthouses in golden light. But our story doesn't begin there. It begins 3 miles away in the labyrinth of Makoko, where 17-year-old Tunde wiped sweat from his brow. Tunde wasn't like other street boys. While others fought over scraps, he collected discarded books from trash bins. While they gambled their earnings, he taught himself mathematics using charcoal on cardboard. His mother had died 2 years ago, leaving him one piece of advice that echoed in his mind every single day. Education, she had whispered on her deathbed, gripping his hand with surprising strength, is the one thing no one can ever steal from you. But education costs money, and money was something Tunde didn't have. That morning, Tunde was running late for his job at the construction site. He sprinted through the narrow alleyways, his worn-out sneakers barely holding together. As he emerged onto the main road of Victoria Island, he stopped to catch his breath. That's when he saw her. A sleek black Mercedes pulled up outside the Royal Crown Hotel. The door opened and out stepped Amara Okonkwo, 19 years old, only daughter of billionaire tech mogul, Chief Richard Okonkwo. She wore designer sunglasses and moved with the easy confidence of someone who had never known struggle. Amara was on her phone, laughing at something her friend said. Completely unaware of the three men watching her from a white van parked across the street, Tunde noticed them first. Something about the way they watched her set off alarm bells in his mind. Growing up on the streets had given him a sixth sense for danger. The men moved fast, too fast. Within seconds, they had surrounded Amara. One grabbed her arm. She screamed, dropping her phone. The designer handbag fell to the ground as they dragged her toward the van. Everyone froze. Businessmen in suits, shopkeepers, security guards. Everyone simply watched, paralyzed by fear or apathy. Everyone except Tunde. "Hey!" he shouted, already running toward them. The kidnappers turned, surprised. One of them was huge, easily twice Tunde's size. But Tunde had learned something on the streets. Size doesn't matter if you're smart and fast. He grabbed a piece of broken pipe lying near a construction site and swung it at the big man's knee. The kidnapper howled in pain, releasing Amara's arm. She stumbled backward, her eyes wide with terror. "Run!" Tunde shouted at her, but she was frozen in shock. The second kidnapper lunged at Tunde, who ducked and rolled, the way he'd learned in countless street fights. He came up swinging, connecting with the man's jaw. The third kidnapper pulled out a knife. Time seemed to slow down. Tunde saw the blade glinting in the sunlight. He saw Amara's terrified face. He saw the crowd of onlookers still doing nothing. His mother's voice echoed in his mind. "Be brave, my son, even when no one else will." Tunde charged forward, using the pipe to knock the knife from the man's hand. It clattered to the ground. The big man had recovered and grabbed Tunde from behind, lifting him off his feet. "You picked the wrong day to be a hero, street rat," the man growled. But Tunde's size was his advantage. He was small enough to slip partially free, just enough to slam his elbow into the man's ribs. Once, twice. The grip loosened. By now, the commotion had finally stirred the crowd. A security guard blew his whistle. The kidnappers heard sirens in the distance. "Forget it, let's go!" one of them shouted. They scrambled back to their van, the big man giving Tunde one last shove that sent him sprawling to the ground. The van screeched away, leaving behind the smell of burnt rubber and the echo of their threats. Tunde lay on the hot pavement, breathing hard, his ribs aching. He'd have bruises tomorrow, but they were alive. A shadow fell over him. He looked up to see Amara standing there, tears streaming down her face, her hands shaking. "You!" she started, her voice breaking. "You saved my life." Within minutes, the area was swarming with police and bodyguards. Chief Okonkwo himself arrived in a convoy of black SUVs, his face pale with panic. When he saw his daughter, alive and unhurt, he pulled her into a fierce embrace. "Who did this?" he demanded. "Who saved her?" All eyes turned to Tunde, who was sitting on the curb, trying to become invisible. Being noticed by the police was never good for a street boy. They had a habit of assuming the worst. Chief Okonkwo approached him slowly, studying this skinny teenager with torn clothes and dust-covered face. His eyes, however, were sharp, intelligent, wary. "You?" the chief asked. Tunde nodded, not trusting his voice. "What's your name, young man?" "Tunde. Sir Tunde Adebayo." Chief Okonkwo's jaw tightened with emotion. "You risked your life for my daughter. While all these people watched, you acted why?" Tunde thought about the question. The honest answer surprised even him. "Because it was right, sir. And because—" He paused, remembering his mother. "Because someone who couldn't be here taught me to be brave." Something shifted in the chief's expression. He pulled out his wallet, withdrew a thick stack of naira notes, and held them out to Tunde. "This is for you. A reward." Tunde stared at the money. It was more than he made in 6 months. He could eat properly, get new shoes, maybe even rent a small room instead of sleeping in abandoned buildings. But he saw Amara watching him. He saw the test in the chief's eyes, and he remembered his mother's second piece of advice. Never let anyone buy your integrity. "I don't want money, sir," Tunde said quietly. The chief's eyebrows rose. "No?" "No, sir. I just want a chance." "A chance at what?" Tunde took a deep breath. This was it. The moment that could change everything. "A chance to go to school, sir. To become something more than what I am. I can read. I can do mathematics. I taught myself. I just need someone to give me a chance to prove I'm worth more than the streets." The silence stretched long. Chief Okonkwo studied this boy, who had risked everything for a stranger and then refused a fortune because he wanted something better. Finally, the chief spoke. "Come to my office tomorrow, 9 a.m. sharp. Okonkwo Tower, 45th floor." He handed Tunde a business card. "And Tunde, don't be late. I despise tardiness." Hold on. Before we continue with Tunde's incredible journey, if you're loving this story so far, please hit that like button right now. And drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Are you in Lagos, London, New York, or somewhere else entirely? We love hearing from our Fortune Tales family around the world. Now, let's see what happens when Tunde steps into a world he never imagined. Tunde arrived at Okonkwo Tower at 7:30 a.m. He had spent all night washing his only good shirt in a public tap, scrubbing until his knuckles were raw. He wanted to make a good impression. But nothing could have prepared him for what he found inside. The lobby was made entirely of marble and glass. The security guard looked at him like he was a stain on the pristine floor. The receptionist wrinkled her nose when he approached. "I have an appointment with Chief Okonkwo," Tunde said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Sure you do," she replied dismissively. "Listen, we don't give handouts here. Move along." "But he told me—" "I said move along." Her voice was sharp now, attracting the attention of 2 security guards. Tunde felt his face burning with humiliation. Maybe it had all been a lie. Maybe the chief had just wanted to get rid of him. Then the elevator dinged and Amara stepped out. She looked different today. No designer sunglasses. Her hair was pulled back simply. She wore jeans and a white blouse. When she saw Tunde being harassed by the security guards, her expression hardened. "Let him go," she said, her voice carrying authority. "He's my guest." The receptionist paled. "Miss Okonkwo, I didn't realize—" "Obviously." Amara turned to Tunde with a slight smile. "Come on, my father is waiting." They rode the elevator in silence. Tunde couldn't help but notice that Amara kept glancing at him as if trying to solve a puzzle. "Thank you," she said finally, "for yesterday. I never got to properly thank you." "You don't need to thank me." "I do, actually. Do you know how many people stood there and watched? Dozens. And not one of them moved." Her voice cracked slightly. "You didn't even know me, and you risked your life." The elevator opened onto the 45th floor. The view of Lagos spread out before them like a glittering dream. But Tunde's attention was on the man sitting behind a massive desk, watching them with calculating eyes. Chief Richard Okonkwo. "Sit," the chief commanded. Tunde sat, feeling like he was on trial. "I've been thinking about you all night," Chief Okonkwo said, "about what kind of person risks everything for a stranger." I ran a background check. Hope you don't mind. Tunde's stomach dropped. A background check. Born in Surulere. Mother was a schoolteacher who died of malaria 2 years ago because she couldn't afford proper treatment. Father unknown. You've been living on the streets since then. No criminal record. In fact, the only thing the police had on you was a citation for breaking into the public library. I wanted to read the books, Tunde said quietly. At 3 a.m.? It was the only time the security guard wasn't watching. I never stole anything. I always returned them. For the first time, Chief Okonkwo smiled. My kind of criminal. Tell me, Tunde, what's the last book you read? Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. And what did you learn from it? Tunde thought carefully. That change is inevitable, but how we face it defines who we are, and that sometimes the worst prisons are the ones we build in our own minds. Chief Okonkwo leaned back in his chair. You're educated despite never attending school. You're brave despite being terrified. You're honest despite having every reason not to be. But here's my question. Are you strong enough? Strong enough for what, sir? To handle what I'm about to offer you. The chief stood and walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. Yesterday, 3 men tried to kidnap my daughter. Do you know why? Tunde shook his head. Because I'm testifying against a corrupt politician next week, Victor Okoro. He's stolen millions from government contracts, and I have the evidence to put him away. The kidnapping was a warning, a way to make me stay silent. The chief turned to face Tunde directly. Here's the situation. I need to keep my daughter safe until after the trial. But she refuses to hide. She has university exams coming up, a life she won't abandon. Every bodyguard I hire is either too obvious or too corruptible. Okoro has money, influence, and no conscience. So what do you need from me? Tunde asked, though he was beginning to understand. I need someone no one would suspect. Someone brave and loyal. Someone who has already proven they'll protect her without hesitation. The chief paused. I want you to be her guardian. But sir, I'm not trained. You're exactly what I need. You'll enroll in her university as a late admission student. You'll stay close to her without being obvious. And you'll keep her safe until this trial is over. And after the trial? Chief Okonkwo smiled. After the trial, I'll pay for your entire education, university, graduate school if you want it. Full scholarship, no strings attached. You'll have the chance you asked for. Tunde's mind was spinning. Why me? You could hire professionals. Because professionals can be bought. Loyalty can't. You proved that yesterday when you refused my money. Amara had been silent this whole time, but now she spoke up. I'm 19 years old. I don't need a babysitter. You almost got kidnapped yesterday, her father shot back, and I would have been fine if you would have been in the back of that van if not for Tunde. This isn't negotiable, Amara. Father and daughter stared at each other, a battle of wills. Finally, Amara sighed. Fine. But he has to actually be a student, not just some bodyguard following me around. I won't live like a prisoner. Chief Okonkwo nodded. Agreed. Tunde, you start on Monday. That gives you 2 days to prepare. My assistant will get you everything you need. Clothes, books, accommodation near campus. But understand this. If anything happens to my daughter, no amount of bravery will save you from my wrath. The threat was clear, but so was the opportunity. Tunde stood and extended his hand. I won't let you down, sir. The next week passed in a blur. Tunde was measured for new clothes, given a crash course in university life, and provided with textbooks he'd only dreamed of owning. But the hardest part wasn't the studying. It was pretending to be something he wasn't. The University of Lagos was a world unto itself. Students drove expensive cars and carried $1,000 bags. They talked about vacations in Dubai and shopping in London. Tunde had never even been on an airplane. But he learned fast. He watched, he listened, he adapted. Amara helped, though she clearly wasn't happy about the arrangement. She showed him around campus, introduced him as her friend from childhood, and warned him not to embarrass her. Just stay close, but not too close, she instructed. And please, try not to look so suspicious all the time. I'll try, Tunde said, scanning the crowd for threats like he'd been taught by Chief Okonkwo's security team. See, that's what I'm talking about. You look like you're hunting terrorists. I'm keeping you safe. You're making people stare. She had a point. Tunde forced himself to relax, to smile, to act like a normal student. It was harder than any street fight he'd ever been in. But something unexpected happened over those first few days. He discovered he actually loved learning. The lectures were fascinating. The library was a paradise. For the first time in 2 years, Tunde felt like he belonged somewhere, even if it was all temporary, even if it was built on a lie. And despite her initial resistance, Amara began to warm to him. One afternoon, Tunde was studying in the library when Amara slid into the seat across from him. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. "Can I ask you something?" she said quietly. "Of course. Why did you really do it? Save me, and don't give me that it was the right thing answer. I want the truth." Tunde closed his textbook. For a long moment, he just looked at her, this girl who had everything he'd ever wanted handed to her on a silver platter. "Because I've spent 2 years being invisible," he said finally. "Walking past people who don't see me. Sleeping in places where no one cares if I live or die. And I thought, if I die, I want it to matter. I want someone to remember that I existed, that I did something good." Amara's eyes glistened with tears. "That's the saddest thing I've ever heard." "Is it? I don't think so. I think it's just honest." She reached across the table and touched his hand briefly. "You matter, Tunde. You mattered before you saved me, and you matter now." It was the first time anyone had said that to him since his mother died. But their moment of connection was shattered 3 days later. They were at a cafe near campus when Tunde spotted him, one of the kidnappers from that first day. The big man, now wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses, sitting 2 tables away. Tunde's blood ran cold. "We need to leave, now." "What? Why?" "Don't argue, just walk with me." Calmly. But as they stood, the big man stood too. And Tunde realized there were 2 others flanking the exits. "Amara," Tunde said quietly, "when I say run, you run straight to that kitchen door behind you. Don't look back. Call your father. Understand?" "Tunde, do you understand?" She nodded, fear flooding her eyes. The big man was moving toward them now, a cruel smile on his face. "Remember me, street rat? You cost me a lot of money that day. My employer isn't happy." "Touching," Tunde said, positioning himself between the man and Amara. "Tell your employer I'm about to cost him even more." The man lunged. Tunde shoved Amara toward the kitchen. "Run!" She ran. The fight that followed was brutal. Tunde had learned some techniques from Chief Okonkwo's security team. But these men were professionals. They'd come prepared. Tunde fought desperately, using chairs, tables, anything he could grab. Other students scattered, screaming. Someone was calling the police. Just hold them off, Tunde thought. Just long enough for her to get away. One of the men grabbed him from behind. The big man pulled out a knife. The same knife from before. "Should have taken the money when you had the chance," he growled. But Tunde had learned something in his weeks of training. How to turn a weakness into a strength. His small size meant he could slip free from holds. His street fighting meant he was unpredictable. He dropped his full weight, surprising the man holding him. Then he swept his leg out, catching the big man's knee, the same knee he'd hit before. The man howled and stumbled. By then, Amara's father's security team had arrived, along with actual police. The kidnappers tried to run but were quickly surrounded. Tunde sat on the floor, bleeding from a cut above his eye, his ribs screaming in pain. But Amara was safe. That was all that mattered. Tunde woke up in a private hospital room. His ribs were bandaged, his eyes stitched. Every part of him hurt. Amara was sitting in a chair beside his bed, her head resting on the mattress, asleep. She looked younger somehow, vulnerable. As if sensing his gaze, she stirred and woke up. When she saw he was awake, Relief flooded her face. "You idiot," she said, tears streaming down her face. "You could have been killed." "But I wasn't." "That's not the point." She was angry now, standing up and pacing. "You keep throwing yourself in front of danger like your life doesn't matter, like you're disposable. Well, you're not. You're not." "Amara, no, listen to me. I've been thinking about this all night, about why you do what you do, and I think I understand now." She sat back down, taking his hand in both of hers. "You don't think you deserve to live? Not really. You think you have to earn the right to exist by saving people, by being useful." Tunde tried to speak, but she cut him off. "But you're wrong. You matter because you're you, not because of what you can do for others. Just you." Something broke inside Tunde. Then all the grief he'd been holding back, all the loneliness, all the fear, it poured out in great heaving sobs. And Amara held him, this girl he was supposed to protect, holding him together while he fell apart. The trial had gone well. Victor Okoro was behind bars, his network of corruption exposed. Chief Okonkwo's testimony had been damning. The kidnapping attempts had only strengthened the case. "It's over," the chief said, pouring 3 glasses of juice. "Okoro won't be bothering anyone for the next 20 years. "What about his associates?" Tunde asked. "Being rounded up as we speak. You're safe. Both of you." He raised his glass. "To Tunde, the bravest young man I've ever met." They drank, but Tunde felt hollow, because now the job was done. The threat was over, and that meant his time in this world was ending. "So," he said quietly, "I guess this is goodbye." Chief Okonkwo frowned. "Goodbye? What are you talking about?" "The deal was until after the trial. The trial is over." "The deal," the chief said firmly, "was that I would pay for your education, your entire education. That means 4 years of university minimum. Did you think I'd go back on my word?" Hope flickered in Tunde's chest. "But I'm not really a student. It was just a cover. You scored in the top 5% on your placement exams. Your professors say you're one of the most dedicated students they've seen. You are a student, Tunde. A damn good one." The chief smiled. "Besides, my daughter would kill me if I sent you away now." Amara, who had been quiet until now, blushed. "Dad, it's true. She talks about you constantly. Tunde said this. Tunde thinks that. Frankly, it's exhausting. I do not—" "You do." Chief Okonkwo's expression softened. "Tunde, I'm giving you a full scholarship. Accommodation, books, everything. No strings attached. You've more than earned it." Tunde couldn't speak. His throat was too tight with emotion. "There is one condition, though," the chief added. Of course there was. Tunde braced himself. "You have to promise me that you'll stop thinking you're worthless, that you'll start believing you deserve the good things that come your way. Can you do that?" Tunde looked at Amara, who was watching him with those intelligent, caring eyes. He looked at Chief Okonkwo, this powerful man who had given him a chance when no one else would. He thought about his mother and how proud she would be. "I can try," he said. "That's all I ask." 6 months passed. Tunde threw himself into his studies with a ferocity that amazed his professors. He wasn't just learning, he was transforming. But the biggest change wasn't in his grades or his knowledge. It was in how he saw himself. Tunde stood in front of his dorm room mirror, adjusting his tie. Tonight was the university's scholarship dinner, where he would be presented with the Okonkwo Foundation Scholarship, a full ride through graduate school. There was a knock on his door. "Come in," he called. Amar entered wearing an elegant blue dress that took his breath away. Over the past 6 months, they had grown close. Study sessions turned into coffee dates. Coffee dates turned into long walks around campus. Neither of them had defined what they were, but something was definitely there. "Ready?" she asked. "Almost. I'm just nervous." "About the speech?" "About everything. A year ago, I was sleeping in abandoned buildings. Now I'm about to give a speech to the richest people in Lagos. It feels surreal." Amara walked over and straightened his tie, even though it was already perfect. "You know what I've learned from you?" "What?" "That courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about doing what's right even when you're terrified. She smiled. You taught me that. I think you had it in you all along. Maybe, but you helped me see it. They stood there for a moment, close enough that Tunde could smell her perfume. He wanted to say so many things. About how she had changed his life. About how he thought about her constantly. About how somewhere along the way, protecting her had turned into something more. But before he could speak, she leaned in and kissed him softly. For luck, she whispered against his lips. The ballroom was filled with Lagos's elite Tunde spotted faces he recognized from newspapers and television. A year ago, he would have been invisible in a room like this. Now he was the guest of honor. Chief Okonkwo introduced him with genuine warmth. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Tunde Adebayo. Many of you know him as the young man who saved my daughter's life. But I know him as something more. Living proof that talent and intelligence exist everywhere, not just in privileged homes. Tunde represents the thousands of brilliant young people in our city who simply need a chance. Tonight, we celebrate not just his courage, but his determination to rise above his circumstances through education and hard work. Tunde walked to the podium, his heart pounding. He looked out at the sea of faces, then found Amara in the crowd. She smiled encouragingly. He began to speak. A year ago, I was nobody. Invisible. Just another street kid that people walked past without seeing. I thought that was all I would ever be. Then one day I saw someone in danger, and I made a choice. Not because I was brave, but because I was taught that doing nothing is worse than doing something and failing. He paused, gathering his thoughts. We live in a city where millions of children have the intelligence to be doctors and engineers, writers, leaders, but they'll never get the chance because they can't afford school fees, because they were born in the wrong neighborhood, because no one ever told them they were worth something. His voice grew stronger. Chief Okonkwo didn't just give me a scholarship. He gave me something more valuable. He saw me, really saw me. Not as a street boy or a charity case, but as a person with potential. That's what changes lives. Not money, not programs, but people who are willing to look past what someone is and see what they could become. He looked directly at Chief Okonkwo. Thank you, sir, for seeing me. And thank you, Amara, for teaching me to see myself. The applause was thunderous. After the dinner, Amara and Tunde snuck away to the building's rooftop. Lagos spread out below them, a million lights twinkling in the darkness. That was some speech, Amara said, leaning against the railing. I meant every word. I know you did. That's why it was so powerful. She turned to face him. Can I tell you something? Always. Before you came into my life, I thought I knew who I was. The billionaire's daughter, the privileged girl who had everything handed to her. And I was okay with that. She paused. But then you showed me that real strength isn't about money or power. It's about character, integrity, the courage to stand up even when you're terrified. Amara, let me finish. You changed my life too, Tunde. You made me want to be better, to do something meaningful with all this privilege I have. That's why I've decided to work with my father's foundation, to help other kids like you get the chances they deserve. Tunde smiled. That's amazing. We're a good team, you know. You with your street smarts and me with my resources. We could really make a difference. Is that what we are? A team? She stepped closer to him. I'd like us to be more than that, if you want. I want, he said softly. But Amara, I'm still figuring out who I am. I'm still learning how to be someone who deserves good things. Then we'll figure it out together. No more invisible street boy. No more sheltered rich girl. Just us, building something new. He pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. I like the sound of that. They kissed under the Lagos sky, two people from different worlds who had found each other in the most unlikely way. 5 years later, Tunde stood in front of the Okonkwo Foundation headquarters, reading the new sign that had just been installed, the Adebayo Okonkwo Center for Street Youth Education. He was 23 now, finishing his master's degree in social work. But his real work was here, at the center he had co-founded with Amara. Inside, 50 former street children were attending classes, learning trades, discovering that they too had potential. Amara came up beside him, a folder tucked under her arm. She wore a simple blouse and jeans now. She'd learned that designer clothes didn't change the world. Hard work did. "Ready for the board meeting?" she asked. "As ready as I'll ever be." "How many new applicants?" 200 this month. We're going to need to expand again." "Good. That's what the foundation is for." They walked inside together, hand in hand. On the wall was a framed photograph, a young Tunde, skinny and scared, standing next to Chief Okonkwo on that first day. Below it, a quote, "Courage is not the absence of fear, but acting despite it. One person's courage can change a life. Many people's courage can change the world." This is the story of how a street boy saved a billionaire's daughter. But it's also the story of how a billionaire's daughter saved a street boy right back. Not with money, not with privilege, but with something far more powerful: the belief that everyone deserves a chance. Tunde learned that heroes don't come from fancy schools or wealthy families. They come from the choices we make when it would be easier to walk away. And Amara learned that real wealth isn't measured in bank accounts, but in the lives you touch and the difference you make. Together, they proved that when two worlds collide, something beautiful can emerge. Not a fairy tale, but something better: a true fortune. Thank you for listening to this fortune tale. Remember, your circumstances don't define your destiny. Your choices do. In every city, on every street, there are invisible heroes waiting for their chance to shine. Maybe that hero is you. Until next time, this is Fortune Tales by Simple, reminding you that sometimes the greatest fortunes aren't found in vaults or mansions. They're found in the courage to do what's right, the wisdom to see potential in unexpected places, and the love that bridges worlds. Stay blessed, stay inspired, and never stop believing in the power of one brave choice. Subscribe for more fortune tales. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, you matter. Your story matters. Never forget that.